Hi boys and girls, it's Mrs. Walker coming to you from the Cozy Corner. I hope that you have found a cozy corner in your home today because it is very, very cold outside. And as you know, we are all home today celebrating the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I know that some of you have read stories about him in your classrooms, and I wanted to share a story about him today as well. But I also wanted you to think a little bit as we read this story about two things. One thing I want you to think about is all of those traits we're learning about in the Positivity Project. I want you to think about how Dr. King is a good example of all of those traits. I also want you to think about how you can honor Dr. King and thinkers like him by the way that you behave every single day at Green Hope and outside of Green Hope. So think about those two things as I read this story to you. This is called Martin's Big Words. And just a note for parents, this does talk about some of the mistreatment of African American people and of Martin Luther King himself and of how he passes away. So I did want to make sure I warned you about that before I start reading in case that's something that you're not comfortable with. Martin's Big Words, The Life of Dr. Martin Luther King, by Doreen Rappaport and illustrated by Brian Collier. Everywhere in Martin's hometown, he saw signs, white only. His mother said these signs were in all southern cities and towns in the United States. Every time Martin saw the words, he felt bad, until he remembered what his mother told him. You are as good as anyone. In church, Martin sang hymns. He read from the Bible. He listened to his father preach. These words made him feel good. When I grow up, I'm going to get big words too. Martin grew up. He became a minister like his father, and he used the big words he had heard as a child from his parents and from the Bible. Everyone can be great. He studied the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. He learned how the Indian nation won freedom without ever firing a gun. Martin said love when others said hate. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. He said together when others said separate. He said peace when others said war. Sooner or later, all the people of the world will have to discover a way to live together. In 1955, on a cold December day in Montgomery, Alabama, Rosa Parks was coming home from work. A white man told her to get up from her seat on the bus so he could sit. She said no and was arrested. Montgomery's black citizens learned of her arrest. It made them angry. They decided not to ride the buses until they could sit anywhere they wanted. For 381 days, they walked to work and school and church. They walked in rain and cold and in blistering heat. Martin walked with them and talked with them and sang with them and prayed with them until the whole city's white leaders had to agree they could sit anywhere they wanted. When the history books are written, someone will say, there lived black people who had the courage to stand up for their rights. In the next 10 years, black Americans all over the South protested for equal rights. Martin walked with them and talked with them and sang with them and prayed with them. White ministers told them to stop. Mayors and governors and police chiefs and judges ordered them to stop, but they kept on marching. Wait. For years I have heard the word wait. We have waited more than 340 years for our rights. They were jailed and beaten and murdered, but they kept on marching. Some black Americans wanted to fight back with their fists. Martin convinced them not to by reminding them of the power of love. Love is the key to the problems of the world. Many white Southerners hated and feared Martin's words. A few threatened to kill him and his family. His house was bombed, his brother's house was bombed, but he refused to stop. Remember, if I am stopped, this movement will not be stopped, because God is with this movement. The marches continued. More and more Americans listened to Martin's words. He shared his dreams and filled them with hope. I have a dream that one day in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. After 10 years of protests, the lawmakers in Washington voted to end segregation. The white-only signs in the South came down. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. cared about all Americans. He cared about people all over the world, and people all over the world admired him. In 1964, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. He won the prize because he taught others to fight with words and not with fists. Martin went wherever people needed help. In April 1968, he went to Memphis, Tennessee. He went to help garbage collectors who were on strike. He walked with them and talked with them and sang with them and prayed with them. On his second day there, he was shot, and he died. His words are alive for us today. And so I want you to be sure that you are thinking every day about your actions and your words and how they are helping people, and making sure that you are thinking about those positivity traits that we're learning and that Dr. King was such a good example of. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I can't wait to see everybody tomorrow morning.